Somewhere on a sound stage in Los Angeles, a young woman just told the man she loves that it's over. She meant every word. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't fill with tears the way they usually do in these moments. And yet, according to everything simmering beneath the surface of this story, that goodbye may be the biggest lie she's ever told herself. Because the truth is, some breakups aren't endings at all. Sometimes they're just the beginning of a much darker, much more painful chapter. One where the person walking away is the one who ends up haunted the longest. What if the very declaration that was supposed to set her free is actually the thing that traps her in regret for months to come? What if the walls she's building right now, brick by brick, moment by moment, are being built on a foundation that's already cracking? And what if the people cheering for her decision, the family members nodding in approval, telling her she made the right call, are the very same people who don't actually have any right to be steering her heart in the first place? Before we go any further, I'm Adam, and this is Buzz the Light, the channel where we don't just tell you what happened on your favorite soap. We dig into why it happened, what it means, and where the emotional wreckage is headed next. If you've ever found yourself yelling at your television screen because a character made a decision that felt so obviously wrong, you already know why you're here. So do yourself a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button, tap the like icon, and share this with someone who's just as obsessed with this drama as you are. Because trust me, the next few minutes are going to leave you with more questions than answers, and you are not going to want to miss what comes after. Now, let's talk about the breakup that's rattling an entire fictional family and the 4 hidden reasons why it might not be the ending anyone thinks it is. Forrester made her choice. She looked at Will Spencer, the young man she once adored, without hesitation, and she told him they were finished, not paused, not on a break, finished. And on the surface, it looked like clarity. It looked like a young woman finally standing up for herself, refusing to tolerate chaos, refusing to be swept up in a relationship that had grown volatile and unpredictable. But peel back that surface, and what you find isn't clarity at all. What you find is fear dressed up as certainty. And fear has a funny way of wearing off the moment the danger feels distant. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud just yet. Electra didn't fall out of love with Will. She fell out of patience with a version of Will that scared her. Those are 2 very different things. And soap opera history has taught us time and time again that the difference between those 2 things is exactly where reunions are born. The longer she spends away from him replaying the good moments instead of the frightening ones, the more that wall she built starts to feel less like protection and more like a prison she voluntarily locked herself inside. Think about it from her perspective for a second. This wasn't a man she tolerated. This was someone she chose, someone she opened herself up to, someone she let past every defense. A young woman raised inside the pressure cooker of a fashion dynasty usually keeps firmly in place. That kind of vulnerability doesn't just evaporate because a breakup conversation happened in a hallway. It lingers. It leaks. And when the noise of the moment fades, when the adrenaline of the confrontation wears off, what's left behind is usually longing, not relief. And that brings us to the second crack forming beneath Electra'S decision. One that has nothing to do with Will at all and everything to do with the family standing behind her, quietly steering the narrative. The Forresters have opinions. They always have opinions. It's practically a family trait passed down like eye color or a talent for design sketches. But somewhere along the way in this particular storyline, those opinions cross the line from concern into control. Electra is not a teenager who needs supervision. She's a grown woman capable of deciding who deserves a place in her life and who doesn't. Yet, every conversation happening around her, every worried glance exchanged between relatives, every whispered warning about Will's temper carries an undertone that suggests her choices aren't entirely her own anymore. There's something quietly devastating about watching a young woman get talked into believing a decision was hers when really it was shaped, nudged, and reinforced by people who claim to love her but might actually just be protecting their own comfort. Because if Electra ever stops and asks herself an honest question, whose relief was this breakup really serving, hers or theirs? The answer might not sit well with her. And once that realization sets in, once she recognizes that she let outside pressure write the ending to her own love story, resentment, music, tends to follow. Not resentment toward herself necessarily, but toward the very family members who insisted they knew best. That kind of awakening doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in slowly in quiet moments. During family dinners where Will's name comes up and gets brushed aside too quickly, or during nights alone when she catches herself scrolling back through old memories she swore she deleted from her mind. And when that awakening finally arrives in full force, Electra may not just miss Will. She may resent everyone who convinced her giving him up was the mature, responsible adult thing to do. But if you think the Forrester family disapproval is the most complicated wrinkle in this story, wait until you hear who's been waiting patiently in the wings, ready to step into the space Will left behind. His name is R.J. Forrester, and on paper, he looks like the safe choice, the reasonable choice, the Forrester family's preferred choice. But dig a little deeper into his own behavior, and a very inconvenient pattern starts to emerge. One that could unravel his entire chance with Electra before it even truly begins. RJ has been positioning himself as the stable alternative to Will's chaos, the calm harbor after the storm. There's just one glaring problem with that narrative. RJ threw his own punch. He got physical with Will. The same kind of impulsive, aggressive outburst that supposedly made Will unworthy of Electra's trust in the first place. And he's not alone in that family tradition of solving emotional problems with fists instead of words. His own father, Ridge Forrester, has a well-documented history of throwing punches when tensions rise, including decking Bill Spencer without a second thought. Aggression, it seems, runs deeper in this bloodline than anyone wants to admit out loud. So, when Electra recoils from Will over his temper, over the accident that left Eric Forrester hurt and pushed her past her breaking point, there's a bitter irony hiding underneath her justified fear. If aggressive impulsive behavior is truly the deal breaker she claims it is, then RJ doesn't get a pass just because he happens to belong to the right family, wear the right last name, and receive the family's blessing. Hypocrisy has a way of revealing itself eventually, especially in tightly wound emotional triangles like this one. And if RJ slips up again, if his temper flares even once more in a moment of jealousy or frustration, Electra may suddenly find herself staring at the exact same red flag she thought she was escaping. Except this time, it's wearing a more socially acceptable disguise. That realization alone could be enough to send her spiraling back toward the memory of Will. Not because he was perfect, but because at least his flaws were honest, unshielded by family privilege and quiet forgiveness. And that brings us to the final piece of this unraveling puzzle. The one twist that could turn Electra's quiet resolve into something far more desperate, far more emotional, and far harder to control. Because while Electra is busy convincing herself she's over Will Spencer somewhere else entirely, another woman is quietly, patiently stepping into the space Electra just vacated. Her name is Melissa Dillon, and she's not interested in waiting around for Electra to change her mind. She's interested in Will right now in his most vulnerable, wounded state. And that timing could not be more dangerous for everyone involved. Because there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that makes a person question a breakup faster than watching someone else swoop in to comfort the person they just walked away from.